Thanks for tuning in to another episode of From Funding to Fame, where we interview the founders and funders currently raising capital on FrontFundr, as well as experts in the private capital markets. I'm your host, Trieste Redding, the head of campaigns at FrontFundr, and I'm excited to introduce more Canadians to equity crowdfunding. This podcast episode features conversations about a business's current operations and future plans, and as a result may contain forward-looking information. There can be no assurance that forward-looking information will prove to be accurate, as actual results and future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements. Listeners should not place undue reliance on forward-looking information. Today we are here with the CEO and founder of VoltSafe, Trevor Burgess. VoltSafe is a Canadian tech startup that has reinvented the electrical plug by eliminating prongs, adding magnets, and an electrical fingerprint. Using their patented technology, they've created the world's safest, simplest, and smartest plug design since electricity came into the home more than 140 years ago. Since being founded in 2015, VoltSafe has maintained an obsession with progress, creating products that are unique and technology that is revolutionary in the field of electronics. Here are some highlights. After receiving their safety certification, they have matured their technology and gained incredible attention from numerous speaking engagements to winning 9 industry-related awards. They've received strong backing through multiple grants and have raised over $6 million to date, including $500,000 from 200 retail investors in a previous FrontFundr campaign. And as the first sprongless connector with exposed contacts to be safety certified, they have been granted 8 utility patents, including 2 in the US. They have filed utility patents in over 40 countries, and they have also received trademarks in the US and Canada. Hi, Trevor. Thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to From Funding to Fame. How are you doing?
Fantastic. How are you yourself?
Doing really well, thanks. Excited to have you and VoltSafe back for another raise with FrontFundr. And, as we look to kick things off today, we'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself and kind of the journey to VoltSafe. So if you could give us a quick introduction, as well as maybe a bit of an overview of what your careers look like so far, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having us here. Pretty excited. I've been in the startup game for a bunch of years now. This is my 3rd startup I have co-founded, and the previous 2 we had successful exits. So that's always nice to have under the belt, but everything is different every time around. And where I first started out was actually in ophthalmic manufacturing. The company now is known as FYI Doctors, and that was a phenomenal experience. Even though I've started out without any business experience, I was doing pre-med and whatnot. I ended up building that and selling it at about 70 employees after co-founding it 5 years earlier. And since then, I went back and did an MBA at Cornell and Queens to get my kind of practical. I had my practical experience, but not my theoretical. So that was great to do, and had an idea with my best friend from high school way back when, and to come up with something that was not really seen before. So, basically we took an idea and kind of by 2015 realized we could possibly come up with something, and it would be this new kind of design or blueprint to creating a future-proof, much better, safer, simpler, smarter, ultimately plug. And everything's going the way of smartification and electrification. Why not try to take a design that's over 120 years old and make something better out of it? So we had seen some things around, and we were inspired by things like the Apple MagSafe, which was a cool little magnetic connector, but that's only for low power, not dangerous to humans. We wanted to figure out, how do you make it easy and awesome with something that is real high power, high voltage, not all that dangerous stuff? And how do you go about it? So that's where we started, and that was essentially 2015.
Wow, that's quite the journey. It's fantastic to hear kind of your background scaling businesses and learning, like you said, the practical, but then more of the theoretical side of it too. And I think particularly for VoltSafe, it's a pretty just such a large concept, right? To really figure out a new way for the electrical plug and to connect to electricity. Was there kind of a particular one moment of inspiration? Was it just kind of you guys throwing around some ideas and realizing things over time that, hey, there's a better way? And would love it as well, maybe if you could give kind of the just quick elevator pitch of what it is that VoltSafe is today.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can give you an idea of kind of where things started and evolved. And ultimately, it started out as like, hey, sure would be nice to have this kind of easy to connect magnetic connector, kind of like your, whether it's, your induction type wireless charging. But it would kind of be cool to do that and be able to disconnect, connect, and also maybe bring some additional safety features that we, don't have to worry about all this other stuff, kids around electricity, water around electricity. So it was a bunch of iterations, and I'd be lying if I said that it was this all of a sudden light bulb moment, and that's where we are today. What it was a light bulb moment that happened where we invented and patented a way of turning on plugs instead of them always being electrified. We went and thought, okay, well, what if plugs were always off? What if we could create kind of like an electricity gate between an outlet and the metal that's there? Well, then we could actually expose the metal, even though that seems crazy. Okay, let's try that. Start at default off. Okay, then we need some sort of way of once it gets close or once it touches, it then knows to turn on. And you can't have definitely no risk of anyone being able to trick it to turn on because now it's electrified metal and you touch it. So that was kind of where it all started. And, nothing is ever one person or two people. It's usually a brain trust of all the amazing people you bring on in the first 10 and 20 employees, especially when it comes to all the intellectual properties. So we locked that down. We advanced the technology and brought it and made it better and better. We even brought a first product, a beta product to market during COVID. We had the whole world basically telling us we'll never get a high voltage connector that exposes the metal ever safety certified. Well, we proved them wrong in 2020. That was great. We got safety certified. We did 10,000 units of this VoltSafe winter, which was for engine block heaters, which inspired the tech. We've matured the technology so that it actually has to touch. It's this unique electrical fingerprint that we set on the adapter side. And then once it does, it will only release the flow of electricity if a clear signal is made. So in other words, if there's water or moisture in between the contacts and it connects, it will not turn on. If you've put metal on it or a magnet or anything, it will not turn on. Now we're releasing one of our first flagship product, which will be in the marine space, which has a whole bunch of problems and challenges associated with it around harsh environments, salt water, and water in general. And it ultimately is the holy grail of when it comes to if you want to transfer power to any voltage or amperage, any level, and you want it to be efficient, and you want it to be as safe as possible and as smart as possible. We also have artificial intelligence built into our technology, so we're able to actually do the thinking and optimize, plugs in your house or in a marina, so that it reduces these peaks in energy spikes that happen in your house, and you have to pay for that peak during a month. So that's where our focus is. So we ultimately save more and make a safer and, quite frankly, an enjoyable experience from all stakeholders.
I appreciate you giving that overview there. I know when you're really revolutionizing kind of a particular area of technology like that, it definitely takes some time. And you mentioned kind of starting things in 2015 and the iterations that it's gone through since then, which is great to hear more about. And I know you touched on some items there, the accessibility of it, the safety of it. And I think that's something that you've highlighted well across the years, kind of through the campaign page and other means, that the technology you've developed really brings with it a positive social, economic, and environmental impact, which contributes to that accessible and sustainable world. And you've touched on a little bit of kind of the value that provides to various stakeholder groups already. But I guess for something that is transforming an industry so much, why is no one else doing it? I mean, you guys are really kind of on the market. You've got this fresh perspective and looking at it from a different angle, which is fantastic. So would love to hear your thoughts just on how you guys are doing things differently and yeah, why no one else has
I love that.
developed anything like this.
I love that question because we asked ourselves the same thing over and over. It's like, what are we missing here? Like, why hasn't someone done that? There's got to be someone has tried this? And the answer is, well, yeah, people have tried it. There are examples of people trying it out there. But the problem is they're focusing on mechanical means. So in other words, they're having a thing that gets close. And let's say it even has a magnet to pull it together. Well, that thing then jams a thing in something, which then twists and opens something else to expose contacts, which then they connect. Mechanical things break. The great thing about the prong plug, the moving parts are so minimal, and it works. Over time, does it loosen? Yes. Does it corrode? Yes. And that causes waste and heat and actually possible fires. And one other thing with prong plugs is arcs. On the way in, there's an arc. On the way out, there's an arc every single time, whether you see it or not. And that's because it's live on that side and there's a load attached to this side, a device. So that arc on the way in happens when it jumps the air gap before it touches, and then on the way out. Ours connects first, then releases the flow of power if it's safe to do so. And on the way out, we actually time the relays and do zero crossing, and are able to reduce and eliminate, in most cases, any arcing on the way out in the relays and also on the contact. A lot of people wouldn't think to go, okay, let's bring the metal to the front and expose it. Now what's that? Now what's going to happen? Okay, well, now we need a magnet. Okay. And then now how are we going to make it turn on? So a lot of these combination of steps aren't exactly something that people think about overnight. And then even if you do it on a proximity-based basis, like our early patents, magnetic actuation, you can do it that way, but it's not always going to be reliable. It's going to be more reliable probably and arguably than a prong plug. But the criticism there is that you're introducing something else that has room for error. And how big could that error be, depending on user bad habits or your child with all their little magnets going, ooh, this is fun. And then it turns on and they touch it. So, you can even do RFID. There's a lot of different ways for proximity-based turning it on when it gets close. But also when it gets close, it's going to do an arc right before it connects because it turns on just before it connects. Whereas the way we're doing it is the best and only best way to do it is getting that to touch automatically. It has to touch hot neutral ground in the case of single phase, just, like residential power. And once it sees that, it will check the unique value we set over here. And when it sees that exact value without anything impeding it, including like rust in between contacts or something, once it sees that clear signal, it will let power flow. So it's not exactly a logical step-by-step thing you just think about on a given day. You have to bring a lot of things that we haven't really seen together and stack them up to make it all work. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way to go about solving this. And essentially 90% of the components inside all of our technology, our blueprint, essentially within a plug, is a smart plug. So by default, we do smart things. So we have an app, we have software that is joined with our marine product, with our home product that we've got in a proof of concept only that we won an award at CES for. So, we are bringing bespoke hardware and stacking software and the smarts on it to be able to leverage something that is basically reaching previously unreachable economic impact and value. So, we even have the power to potentially unite any and all plug types around the world. We do automatic switching between the different frequencies worldwide. Like Japan even has like 100 volts on the west side of Japan, 110 volts on this side, and they're both at different frequencies. Our outlets would theoretically just connect to the wall, and whatever adapter you have, obviously adoption always requires that kind of stuff. And you have the adapter, you just put the adapter in, it'll work for the same plug, no matter what, even though it's a smart plug and delivers a lot of fun stuff and automates stuff. So it's
That's
pretty
amazing.
fun.
Yeah, really, really incredible technology that you guys have developed. And I think the one thing with electrical plugs is it's probably, that item that people obviously use every day and just don't even think about because it's attached to a device and they may not think about that connection point. I'm in my home office right now and you look at all the cords that are currently plugged into an outlet and there's a ton. So this is something that obviously impacts everyone kind of in their individual day to day. But I think as you mentioned, you've also
Yeah.
outlined some different verticals that you're targeting with that, kind of with
Our
marine being that
first,
next one,
yep.
which is awesome. And you mentioned kind of at that international expansion and connection point. So I think with something like this, like you can just imagine how big of an opportunity it is with just the sheer amount of electrical plugs across the world. So would love to hear a little bit about, some of those verticals that you're going after and what really the market opportunity is for a solution like this that's completely revolutionizing kind of how the electrical plug is thought about.
It's really not something that people really think about too much because it's such a commodity, and you've got about 85% of the world's population that connects using a prong plug almost daily, and 15 different residential plug types. I would argue that over time, since Hubble first patented prong plugs in 1905, over time, every time we've improved the design of a pronged plug, it's always been at the expense of the user experience. Most recently, the 2009, the tamper-resistant slider. If you've ever come across these, you try to put the prongs in, and if you don't hit it exactly straight, those plastic sliders, inserts, they will not move over. And so you just start fighting with this plug. Yeah, so some of the areas we're focused on, obviously the big thing, the big elephant in the room is the residential plug. We recognize, and we're currently talking to various incumbents that are leading that space, and we're very picky as to who we will go with that. We do not want to jump into that market too fast. We want to focus on these markets that have this major pull and drastic need to solve some key problems. So one of those areas that we want to prove the technology and where it can go, and it really showcases it, is marinas. So it would be starting out, we have actually right now we have 13 pilots around North America. So in the west of Canada, east of Canada, central Canada, and then all the way down to Florida, Georgia, and then west coast of the US also. So we've done these pilots for our marine product. And what that is it sits on a pedestal on a dock, and boats will plug into it so that they can turn on their various devices when they are at the marina. One thing we do there that's really critical is doing leakage detection. So leakage in the water, because in fresh water, you can have electric shock drownings, you can have what's called galvanic corrosion from boat to boat, which eats the metal of boats, all this crazy stuff. And we've delivered a software in a very unique and comprehensive package, whereby if I am a boat owner, I get to plug into this cool magnetic connection, and I get an app that I can see how much power in real time, voltage, amperage, watts, how much money I've spent so far this month. And also, do I have any current leakage, stray current leakage happening from my boat, which is quite frankly dangerous and not good. You need to get that fixed. And then on the customer side, so that's the end user for us. The customer side, that is the actual marina owner operator. So they would, in a normal day, they'd be running around and trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? Are these plugs getting old? Are they heating up? Meltdowns, potential fires, complaints about the stray current leakage happening, and a lot of finger pointing, which sucks for them because their job's not easy. What we do is we actually have a desktop dashboard that we've created, and they sit down with their morning cup of joe and look at it and see every single outlet at every single slip and boat and who that is at each slip, and be able to see, are there any red flags for today? Is there extra leakage that's happening? Do I have one of my boat owners communicating with me saying, hey, I'm at work, I noticed the power was turned off on my boat. Can you go check? I've got a whole bunch of food in the fridge for the weekend. Can you go make sure that's plugged in? So we deliver a seamless user experience. And our whole goal is all stakeholders be able to, from start to finish, have this just amazing user experience that leaves a smile on your face and kind of gives you that peace of mind. So that's the marine space. Obviously, the space itself, If you look at it from a bottom-up approach with our technology, the hardware and the software, because we have software as a service, a monthly per slip fee, the market on the hardware is about $3.5 to $3.6 billion a year. If you look at it on the software, we're just over 200 million a year. To sum it up, anything with prongs, metal prongs that you currently plug in, whether it's three-phase, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, we can create a prongless plug that utilizes our blueprint and designs to do so. So, when on a remuneration kind of standpoint, we'll be making money more on hardware, but also have software as a service as a very fast growing component to it. And we've got what we call the big book, and it's a book of printed out emails from small and medium and large businesses that have made requests on a various amount of different product applications, like emergency services, ambulances, hospitals, all the way up to stage managers, shoots at movies for these magnetic plugs that can turn on and off with ease. So I won't go into it any farther than that, but the market is very clear and obvious. And our IP we focused on really early, and we created a very deep moat so that as much as a first mover advantage is always the best advantage that I believe startups should focus on, you need to have strong IP backing that just in case.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate the example that you gave with the marina there and walking through kind of the hardware and software sides of the business. I think that's a great illustration for those who are listening. And I know you kind of mentioned in terms of the business model and how you guys are looking to monetize, which is great, and that targeting kind of 5 million in sales next year as you look to hit the marina circuit, which is great. Another thing that I'd like to touch on, and I think you guys as a company have done particularly well since we last really saw you guys for a raise, is really just keeping investors informed and up to date about business progress. And I think what's just been impressive is the amount of traction that you've had since we last saw you to date. I feel like every month or two, it's a new award or a new grant or a new contract that you've landed. And it's great to see from a business standpoint. And we really appreciate that you guys are keeping investors up to date and informed along the way. But would love if you can maybe share a bit more just about the company's traction so far, because it really, you guys have hit some incredible milestones, and would also kind of like to hear what's next on that growth path for you.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And all I can say to that is, any startup, any company, it's all function of who your team members are. After my first business, I realized that if you want to look awesome in the eyes of people, hire people that are more awesome than you, and they will make you look amazing. So the credit goes out to all the team members that have led all the various areas in what we do each day. So, and special shout out to the marketing team and digital. It's great, all the stuff and design. We feel like we're in a happy place, and there's a lot more going on that we'll be excited to share in the near term too. So we recently had won an Innovative Solutions Canada award for a project which was $550,000 to develop using our most recent technology, which is the resistive sensing, having to touch first, to create an extension cord for 15 amps that will automatically connect and self-align and deliver that 15 amps, 125 volts. And be able to utilize it for various different areas. So PSPC, Procurement Services Canada, and whatnot. They're all trying this out. We've delivered it, so that $550,000 project is done. It is fun to ring that bell. We've also got a couple other things that are kind of in the works that we're hoping to tie off soon. Other than that, there's a couple other really key projects outside of the marine space that we are currently activated doing. But I'd love to stick primarily to the marine space because we don't like to lose sight of our path to revenue. And what we aim to do after bringing this 30 amp product to market for shore power is 30 amp magnetic connector. The next one right after that, that has about 20% of the market, is a 50 amp split phase. So essentially, you're increasing the power by a more than 2x of a 30 amp single phase. And it's for those bigger boats. Those boats that are kind of like 40 to 70 feet can use one of these connectors. And we are actually just finished talking with one of the leading manufacturers and designers in the world for existing plugs. And we'll likely be partnering with them in a way to co-develop a very novel way of delivering this split phase connector, which requires additional items in there. So we're excited about that. And that'll be the next product to market in the marine phase of our growth. And that would essentially have about 95% of the connector shore power market for marine. We're excited to ultimately start delivering the product, but we have to, we're taking all the pilots and we're taking all the feedback and distilling it into a minimum viable product, or MVP. And that's what we're delivering for our commercial product. And we expect it to land ultimately in people's marinas, fully deployed, likely Q2 of 2025. But there's a lot of bits and pieces in between. Even though what we have now, if someone was to look at it, goes, oh, that looks like a fully commercialized product. It's like, if you want to do it right, you really got to listen to your stakeholders. And that's why we're doing it this way, in a calculated and steady Eddie sort of way.
That's great. Well, I like how you mentioned really just obviously there's so many different areas and verticals that you guys could go after, but there's an importance in kind of staying focused, particularly as you're looking to generate revenue. I think that's great from a strategy side, and congratulations kind of on all the great traction you guys are seeing to date. And I know you touched on briefly there, obviously there is a bit of a difference fundraising in the US kind of Silicon Valley versus being a Canadian company. Definitely Canadian economy and investment landscapes always usually a couple degrees cooler than how quickly kind of money flows in the US. But I know you guys have been on Dragon's Den, and I know you did a raise with us, obviously, in 2022. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about just your experience raising capital so far and what you're hoping to achieve with this current round through FrontFundr.
Yeah. So, one thing all the VoltSafe executive and team members will say is that over time, one thing I've been very passionate about is keeping our Canadian company very Canadian. It gets harder and harder, but it is something that we're all very passionate about. As such, hardware in Canada is a much harder space that Canadian VCs, including the government, it's a much harder space for them to invest in. Their VC kind of profile is a little more risk averse, and that's understandable to a point. So we get that. But what I was really from the get-go, what I really cared about is getting angels and essentially brand ambassadors to support what we're doing early and as long as possible. I realized that, for example, our next raise, our Series A raise after this, that will likely all be institutional. So that window for, angel investors or just average Joe and Jane being able to invest in a private company like VoltSafe won't be possible in the future, probably, because those large capital raises, just kind of take it all up. And most VCs don't like a whole bunch of people on the cap table. But to date, I can proudly say that we've raised only through friends, family, angels, and strategic high net worth angel investors. So we've raised just over $6 million, all through people who believe in our team, in us as individuals, and also believe in the technology and how it's going to impact the world in the short and long term. So still trying to keep and hold on to that as long as possible. One reason why we love FrontFundr, outside of various other reasons about FrontFundr. It's not easy being FrontFundr. Um, you know, the market, you guys clawed into the market to make it possible for all these angels to be able to invest, which is great. And I think angel investors are more savvy than government and VCs give them credit for. That gut check, gut feel tends to actually outwin, I find, the prediction versus a lot of VCs and what they look for. So that's why we wanted to put it out on FrontFundr one last time. We love having the brand ambassadors, and we love even talking to them back and forth, just via email or whatnot, and staying in touch and giving them all the updates. Our team has been really focused on that. In the past, it was a lot harder to give regular updates, but we love doing it because we're constantly biting our lip, going, "Oh, geez, I'd love to tell our existing investors about this or this or this," but we don't have the time because we're busy doing the next thing. So, yeah, pretty excited. We're pretty excited about doing this again. So.
No, it's awesome. We're very excited to have you guys back. I know, we have a lot of companies who raise with us who have a very kind of tangible consumer product on the market, and it's easy for people to, understand and be that customer brand ambassador. And I think, with you guys, it's definitely a little bit different. It's not necessarily a tangible product right away for individuals, but it's just this huge concept of being able to really transform an industry. And it's exciting for so many people. And I think you guys have done a really great job over the years, highlighting the opportunity that exists here and really getting people excited about it. And to your point, now you have kind of this army of brand ambassadors who are excited just to share the news that you have from the rooftops there. And very excited to see that kind of come through with this next campaign as well, now that
No,
you've
that's
got
awesome.
all these great brand champions supporting you. But
No, it's fun.
as
Yeah.
yeah, we're very happy having you guys back, and I think it's going to be another great raise with you, which is awesome. So just
No,
as
that's
we
great.
look to kind of wrap things up today, I've got a couple final just two questions that I want to run through here. I know you've obviously had kind of pretty tremendous background as an entrepreneur and a founder. You've founded and scaled a few different businesses. Like you said, you went back to school for the theoretical side of it as well.
Yeah.
So would love to kind of just hear for any entrepreneurs who might be listening, or any individuals kind of running a business or thinking about a capital raise, what's maybe a quote or a piece of advice you've received along your journey that you'd like to share with them?
Well, anyone that's just in general thinking, "Hey, I've got an idea and like to strike out," um, just know, and if you can handle this, be prepared for this. Um, yes, the highs are higher than an average day at work, when you accomplish certain little key things or big things. The lows are also lower, much lower, and those quite often come on the same day. So you can find some great news over here, and then some, oh no, and then you're just like, oh, is this it? Are we done? And obviously, the longer the company survives, the less likely the catastrophic negative impacts that can just be peeking around the corner occur. But overall, I mean, one thing that I think I made the right decision, and just mentally, when I had no idea about business, with my first business, was I just naturally trusted and believed in people to do sideways management, what I would call it. But I can tell you, I have found and learned the most amazing things, and the majority of things, from the least likely of people you would think. It's from someone who is in my shipping department and just has a different take on something that makes you think in a different way. I'm a very my whole life I would always get in elementary school an N on the listening skills. I got very bored with stuff. I was that kid that just would never focus and still have trouble with that. But one of the reasons I love coming to work every single day is because, um, honestly, it is so dynamic. The people you get to work with, the problems you get to try and figure out or not, are so challenging that it is impossible not to be captivated by what's going on. And you either, in a piece of advice for anyone starting a business. It may seem counterintuitive, but definitely bring in strong people that will serve as key pillars in the business. Not people that say, hey, I'll help out over here or there. Someone that's going to bleed daily in the company and that's going to shoulder a certain weight that is going to lighten off of part of you. It's worth giving up whatever the equity is to do it, because it allows you to build a culture that you want. And by the end of the day, you can actually go home and maybe, have a conversation with a friend or a loved one in a meaningful way versus just hit the bed and pass out.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I think great leadership style that you've kind of instilled, and I think that comes through and is reflected with your team. Absolutely, on my end, love working with your team. They're a great group, and
Thank you, Trias.
that definitely shows through in the successful raises that you've had in the past. And just to close things out here quickly today, I know you kind of mentioned 3 items there. Want to summarize kind of the investment opportunity and anything for investors to keep with them as they consider this. So any final words on your end as we look to close out the episode today?
Sure. Investing with VoltSafe is investing in the future of electrical infrastructure. Ultimately, as our population ages and we need more convenient, more easy to use hardware, we also need software that makes it easier in a cognitive perspective and just does what we need it to do. Can you just save me more money on the electrical bill? I'll give you a couple input, but I don't want to write it all in. So that's where we're focused. We're focused on the user experience and the fact that our technology is patented, and not just patented in Canada or the US, patented worldwide in all the relevant countries that are worthwhile to patent in. We're moving forward, and we're moving as fast as possible to monetize the patents we have, and we're not focused on trying to hold out for the most impossible high patent royalty in a certain vertical. Really, what we're looking to do is do a fair push into all the different verticals and antiquate the electrical prong plug. And we want to make everything as mindless and simple as possible, so we don't have to need all these programs on electrical safety and also putting these plastic inserts into wall outlets that actually do nothing. Yeah, you're investing in the mothership, in VoltSafe, in everything we do, our technology. There are no subs. All our shares are common shares, meaning any share I own or anyone else owns in the company, you investing also gets you those common shares. And we also, I believe, good old Scott, our CFO, we are an eligible business corporation. I believe we still have some credits left over, meaning people can apply, do an investment, and receive 30% tax back as a tax, not just a credit, but actually as a check. So it's not a write off. You don't just write it off. You actually get a refund, 30% for the investment. So yeah, I'd love to have everyone join us in the journey, and because it would sure be nice to, change the world and have a lot of people to talk with about how they joined early and help make it happen.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions today, Trevor. I know we have obviously done a raise with you in the past, and I think this is a great opportunity to get some more insight into the company and what you guys are doing and how you do it. So really appreciate you sharing kind of your experience and more about where the company is headed. And certainly we're, as I said, very excited to have you guys back. Fantastic kind of raise in the past. You've had great traction since then. So very excited for investors on this new opportunity. So for those listening, to learn more, you can visit the VoltSafe campaign page at frontfundr.com/VoltSafe. And Trevor, thanks again. Big pleasure chatting with you today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Trias.
For anyone new to the podcast, FrontFundr is Canada's leading equity crowdfunding platform, enabling all Canadians to invest in the most exciting startups and growth stage companies, something that was previously only available to the 1%. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can have your questions answered in an upcoming episode. This podcast episode is for informational purposes only and should not constitute financial advice. Investors should conduct their own due diligence on any investment they may be considering on FrontFundr. For details of any offering listed on FrontFundr, refer to the offering document on their campaign page at www.frontfundr.com.
Oh, by the way, Trieste, I forgot to mention, this FrontFundr equity round, we can no longer accept Canadian Tire money. So if you could let actually, you know what? There is an exception. Ryan Reynolds, if you're listening, get your butt back to Van City, and VoltSafe needs a pretty face to plug our plug technology. Yeah, so if you could do that, that would be great.